In this video I'm checking if the 97X with its power set to 105 watts from the launch 65 watt settings brings any benefits in games. The latest BIOS from ASUS follows suit the other manufacturers that have released versions that allow the 97X to increase its power limit. In a previous video that I compared the 97X against the 7800X3D, some people suggested that those results were different from other reviewers, so I decided to check again the CPU's stock performance alongside enabling PBO for both and the 105 watt for the 97X. Previously, I was using an older Windows 11 image and after installing it, I was applying a lot of updates. But this time around, I downloaded the latest one, in this case 23H2, and applied all the updates that were available. I also made sure that I'm an admin by using this command, netuser administrator active yes. I used yet again the 7900 XTX tweaked a bit with the power limit set to plus 15% to keep it consistent with the previous video. Using the latest ASUS BIOS, I ran Furmark CPU burner for 10 minutes for the following configs for the 97X to check the clock, stock, PBO set to -30 and the 105 watt power limit. With the previous BIOS version, the stock 97X was averaging 4566 MHz, a bit more than Gamers Nexus was getting with their Blender run. Have a look at the averages that I got with the new BIOS, 4894 for stock, 4909 when setting PBO all cores to -30, and 5373 when increasing the power limit to 105 watts, where at around 30 degrees C room temperature, the CPU was thermothrottling as it was staying at a constant 95.2 degrees. Yet again, both CPUs were tested with tweaked memories running at 6200 C30 and Infinity Fabric set to 2067. The timings can be seen on the screen. When it comes to PBO, I set both CPUs to all cores negative as both are stable using this setting. Moving on to gaming, I tested Fortnite only at 1080p using low settings. When installing Windows after I swapped the CPU, I forgot to save the replay, and this is why we can see only the 97X results. From top to bottom, the first bar is for the stock 97X, as you can be seen on the legends on the top, from left to right, followed by PBO and the 105 watt setting. All these settings deliver similar average, as any difference is within margin of error. In Anno Wake 2, using low settings, the stock 7800X3D is ahead, delivering averages of 216.4 compared to the 9700X's 208.5. When enabling PBO for both CPUs, the 97X edges a bit, but the difference can be attributed to margin of error. Both CPUs benefit from PBO set to -30 for all cores, with the 97X seeing a bigger performance increase. At this stage, the 7900 XTX becomes the bottleneck. When moving to 1440p and using max graphics settings alongside FSR set to quality, both CPUs deliver similar results, as neither enabling PBO or a higher power limit for the 97X helps in pushing the 7900 XTX to break the tie. I tested Anno 1800 only using low settings, and for some reason when using the 7800 X3D CPU I was seeing some minor stutters at the beginning of each run, and this is why the 9700X is faster by around 20 FPS. I ran the test for 8 times using the 7800 X3D CPU to see if I have some runs without stuttering, but had no luck. Moving on to Star Wars Outlaws, using low settings at 1080p, the game seems to benefit more from higher clock speeds than cache, as the 97X is a bit ahead the 7800 X3D. Don't forget that at 1080p low settings, if the game is not heavy on the CPU, the around 500 MHz single core speed can be an advantage for the 9700X. The stock 9700X is ahead by almost 8 FPS when compared to the 7800 X3D similar setting, enabling PBO for both CPUs or increasing the power limit for the 9700X doesn't help, as the differences are within margin of error. Increasing the graphics settings and the resolution, thus using max settings alongside FSR set to quality at 1440p, the GPU becomes the bottleneck and the CPUs are all within margin of error, though for some reason both CPUs set to stock deliver the best results. Let's move to F124 1080p low settings. In this game, both CPUs deliver similar results, but the 9700X's 105W setting pulled ahead. I'm not sure why this is the case, though it's less than 15 FPS, meaning around 2% advantage over the stock 9700X or the 7800 X3D. When I increase the resolution to 1440p max settings, the CPUs are tied, as the 2 FPS difference can be attributed to margin of error. Again, both CPUs can push the 7900 XTX to its full potential, and not even increasing the power limit and using a slight undervolt manages to break the bottleneck. In Cyberpunk 2077, the 7800 X3D enjoys a big lead over the 9700X at low settings 1080p. This game benefits heavily from the increased cache that the 7800 X3D has over the 9700X. Enabling PBO for the 7800 X3D maintain the same delta compared to when increasing the power limit, or enabling PBO for the 9700X. As expected, when increasing the resolution and using max settings with path tracing alongside FSR set to quality, the 7900 XTX is yet again the bottleneck, as both CPUs deliver similar results regardless of the configuration. This is the norm at 1440p using this GPU. Moving on to Black Myth Wukong at 1080p low settings. In my current test run, which is uneventful, the 9700X enjoys a small lead over the 7800 X3D with 231.9 compared to 224.2 frames per second. Enabling PBO doesn't do much, it increases the averages by less than 2 frames per second, which can be margin of error. It seems yet again that higher clock speeds win. Increasing the resolution and the graphics settings alongside FSR set to quality sees these two CPUs tied. As we are GPU bottleneck, enabling PBO or increasing the power limit doesn't help, though a better GPU may give different results. Looking at 1080p low settings in Company of Heroes 3, both CPUs seem to deliver the same performance in the opening scenes of the Italian campaign. When enabling PBO for both CPUs, the framerate drop from scenes with explosions is lower, and the 7800 X3D takes the lead with 440 frames per second compared to 422 for the 9700. Bumping up the resolution to 1440p using max settings, there is no difference in performance between both CPUs, not even when I enable PBO or increase the power limit to 105W for the 9700X. This is as many frames per second that this GPU can deliver regardless of the current gen CPU used, as the 7900 XTX is the bottleneck. When using low settings at 1080p in Horizon Forbidden West, the 9700X has a small lead over the 7800 X3D of around 4 FPS. What is a bit strange is that by enabling PBO, both CPUs lose a bit of performance, but this may be attributed to margin of error. Upping the resolution and maximizing the graphics settings without using any sort of upscalings sees no difference between these CPUs except when enabling PBO for the 9700X. In this configuration, the 9000 series CPU pulls barely ahead by 3 FPS when comparing to the same PBO setting of the X3D CPU, though I will attribute this win to margin of error. Nobody Wants to Die is a game that is easy to drive, and at 1080p low settings, both CPUs perform the same, though the 9700X with PBO enabled has a slight framerate advantage of around 5 FPS. I'm not sure why this is happening, as I tested multiple times and had the same results. When moving to 1440p max settings, we see yet again the CPUs tied, while the 9700X enjoys a small lead when enabling PBO with all cores set to -30. This game seems to benefit more from sustained higher clock speed. Outcast A New Beginning is a pretty intensive CPU game, and even at 1080p low settings, the 7800 X3D leads the 9700X when using the stock settings. Enabling PBO for the 7800 X3D sees it jump from averages of around 284 to 296 frames per second, while the 105W power setting delivered the best result for the 9700X, increasing the frame rate from 274 using stock setting to 283 frames. Increasing the resolution to 1440p using max settings sees any CPU difference disappear, as now the 7900 XTX is the bottleneck. Any minor difference that can be seen here are within margin of error. The last game that I checked is Total War Pharaoh. At 1080p low settings, both CPUs are tied. Something must be going on when enabling the 105 power setting for the 9700, as it loses a bit of performance compared to the stock setting. Moving to 1440p max settings, both CPUs perform the same at stock settings. When setting PBO to -30, the 7800 X3D seems to edge a bit when compared to the 9700X. I suspect that by using a better GPU, the lead would have been a bit bigger. I'm gonna focus on only the 1440p max settings chart, as the 1080p low settings is a bit redundant because nobody plays these games at the lowest setting with a €400 USD CPU paired with a €900 USD GPU. In this chart we can see that the CPU is not that important when maximizing the settings at 1440p. Both CPUs deliver almost the same performance with a few minor outliers. The 9700X with its PBO set to -30 on all cores deliver a bit more performance in Horizon Forbidden West and Nobody Wants to Die, if around 4 FPS can be called that, and the 7800 X3D has a bit better results yet again with PBO in Total War Pharaoh. Yet again, the 7900 XTX is pushed to its max capabilities, so you really don't need to spend that much on a CPU, as I demonstrated in the video linked in the top right corner, where I had a look at the Ryzen 5 7600. I know that these results yet again upset some people that swear that the 7800 X3D decimates the 9700X, but in my testing this is not the case. At 1080p low settings, this CPU straight blows. In order to make sure that these results are correct, I retested again some games when I saw unexpected performance differences by changing back the CPU and reinstalling Windows to make sure that the results are in line with what I posted in this video. And that's why it took so long to release it. But the results that I just showed are triple checked. Keep in mind that by using low settings, the larger cache doesn't help that much, as in this situation there is not much complexity added to the scene. Larger amounts of cache help in ray tracing scenes or in high settings when we are not GPU bottlenecked. Have a look. Even at 1080p low settings, in some of the latest games the 7900 XTX is close to 100% utilization, and this may be the case why we are not seeing big differences. Another thing that I want to add is that PBO helps in maintaining the max core clock in single-threaded scenarios, thus helping in delivering better performance in games that we are not entirely GPU bound. This situation applies to any Ryzen CPU, so my recommendation is to enable it to gain some minor performance, as you saw in some test results that I showed, and lower a bit the CPU thermals. So, what are my thoughts about the 9700X? I still think it's a good CPU, as it runs a lot cooler than both the 7800X3D or the 7700X that it replaces, provided the price is right. I think the biggest enemy of this CPU is its price, while the biggest selling point is that it's really easy to cool. Its current price is a bit high when compared with the previous generation, as it's heavily discounted and the performance uplift doesn't warrant the price difference. And that's it for this CPU review. If you found the video helpful, click the thumbs up button, share your thoughts in the comment section, and consider subscribing to the channel to help it grow. Take care and hope to see you all in the next one.